This is the video for the week ending Friday, July the 16th. And really quick, just going to go through some technicals um, as usual. McClellan oscillator, look at this, deeply oversold. Monday should definitely be a bounce higher, but can that continue? I mean, that's the question everybody's asking, right? The summation index, which I've been plotting manually, the summation index is just falling off of a cliff. And every time we have the summation index dropping, the market drops. And you can see. And it's really, really getting weak. So now the advancers to decliners, you know, the compounding value of that is bringing it down lower. So that's not a good sign. What's good is when you have these kind of moves, then the S&P does this kind of thing. When you have this kind of move, the S&P does this kind of thing. Now we have this kind of move and the S&P isn't doing it yet. So now let's look at the key charts because there are some technical indicators to look at. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, this green line right here is its closing high, and it's been rejecting that closing high now for some time, several days this week. It's also hit a 150% Fibonacci on the movement from COVID, high and low of COVID. We came back up to 100%. We spent quite a bit of time around 100%. And then we're moving up along the 50 moving average where we see support. So watch the 50 moving average for support right here. So that would put it in between 34,455 and just below that. So watch for that kind of support, and if it loses it, let's get ready for a bit of a pullback and a chance to redeploy some of the money that we took out of the market about 2 or 3 weeks ago, at least for me. Now the NASDAQ, let's look at the NASDAQ. It's hit a Fibonacci point of 278.6. Let's get rid of the cloud because it's not relevant right now. Moving averages, the 50 hasn't been as important a support as have the Fibonacci's. The NASDAQ is coming off of an all-time high, so keep a look at that. The Apple chart looks very, very much like this, as you'd expect. Now the S&P, which one did I have in the S&P? Let's look at the S&P with the volatility index. Here we're going back to 2018, and this white chart here is the volatility index, and you can see a low here, a low here. Now we've established a trend line with a third point, so we're not likely to see the volatility index fall below this trend line. We want to look and see if it's moving up, but for the time being it's still in that comfort area where, sorry, that's the S&P. The volatility index is still in that comfort area, and the S&P is also pulling back from an all-time high. The 50 moving average is important for the S&P. Whoops, let me go back here and show you with the moving averages. You can see the 50 here, lost it a couple of times, didn't really come down to the 200. The 50 here, lost it a bit only for a couple of days. The 50 here, again, like the Dow Jones, watch for the 50 moving average. Now here's the volatility index, and this green line is this sort of complacent zone where when we're under that, the market is moving up, and we're still under that, and we've got this cloud here in the Ichimoku system. So take a look at that. This SMI is showing that we could have the volatility index because both of these momentum indices are now at their bottom and starting to move up. Let's look at some stocks. Apple. Apple is in this kind of a channel here. I'm going to show you the Bollinger Bands and the channel, but it is at the top of the Bollinger Bands. And you look throughout this channel, we get the top of the Bollinger Bands, it pulls down. Top of the Bollinger Bands, it pulls down. Here, it bumped at the top of the Bollinger Bands and came down to the midpoint, but then comes up, down, top of the Bollinger Bands, moves sideways. We're certainly at the top of the Bollinger Bands here. So now let's take a look. Let's remove the Bollinger Bands and just look at this trend area. And the Ichimoku shows that certainly we're off and running. We've been off and running since June the 17th, when we had the Chiku span break and price break. But now we got a chance to see if we can't pull back and test the cloud. But we have earnings coming up, and they're probably going to be pretty darn good earnings. But everybody is really looking for October earnings when the new iPhone 13 comes out. I wouldn't buy Apple at this elevated value unless you plan to hold on to it for the next 5 years. IBM, it's just flattening, really nothing to see there. Now on NEO, there is something to see. And which analysis do we want to look at? We want to look at this one. We've lost the 50, and the Chiku span is below the candles. Not a good thing for NEO, and both of these SMIs are moving down. Not a good thing for NEO. This is all part of the, how safe is it to invest in Chinese stocks, and what ARK, Kathy Wood, has been saying about Chinese stocks. Square, on the other hand, is getting good support on the cloud, and you can see the Chiku span getting support on the cloud, nearly support on the cloud, and now moving up. So Square is actually looking better, and I think it was Kathy Woods that was saying that Square is one of her really go-to kind of safe stocks, and I really like it. SAVA, let me show you this chart of 3 different stocks that are involved in the Alzheimer's race. Biogen already have one that's just recently approved, but there's some question now about why the FDA approved it, how the FDA approved it, and whether there wasn't some influence going on there. So Biogen has responded to those investigations by moving down. Now their product is something like $10,000 a month or something. The market really wants some kind of a small molecule drug, but you can look at SAVA, Casanova Biosciences. I think that they've been impacted by the Biogen thing, and ALEC, which I had at one time and got out of it because it just wasn't moving. Well, bang, look at that. What a gap it created that day on July the 1st. And moved up, but it's also now moving down. So I think it's the Biogen effect, and if you're in these stocks, this could be an opportunity to buy, because these could be low points. SAVA could go down a little bit further. It is going to look for, I was telling a friend of mine, it might be looking for the 50. Now, is SAVA really the kind of stock that trades around moving averages? It really doesn't have that long a history to say so, but it would appear not to be. SAVA is just driven by the fact that they're going to have a 9-month study released on July the 29th at an international conference. And then they're going to talk about a 9-month study of delaying the onset of dementia. But they've now also got a year's worth of data, but they won't be able to present that in September. They may, July. We may be looking till August, September, October for them to present 1 year. But if they have 1 year's worth of data of preventing or delaying the onset of Alzheimer's, that's going to be great for this stock. I did shuffle my positions around and minimized my exposure for a while because I would like to see it pull back to the 50, but I've been buying every time there's a dip. I've been buying, and I bought again on Friday, but I bought at 85, and you can see that it closed at 80. I would love to see it close at 73, and then I would start buying call spreads. I think I'm tapped out from a stock point of view, but we'll see. That's all for today. The key thing I'm trying to show you here, by the way, banks. Let's look at banks for a second. JP Morgan struggling under the 50. US Bank, the 5th largest bank, struggling around the 50 and under the cloud, just like JP Morgan as well. Banks will be affected by stagnant inflation, stagnant interest rates, and rising inflation isn't helping the banks. They did all have a big jump on Thursday, but then a pullback on Friday. Let's look at JP Morgan, same thing here. Bit of a move, not as much as US Bank, but US Bank got a great analyst's review saying that it's going to have it's got a $70 target, and that's what helped it on Thursday. Bottom line, the markets are at all-time record highs. The volatility index is indicating that it doesn't see anything wrong with that, although it's starting to creep up a little bit higher. So keep an eye on that. The summation index looks terrible, and the McClellan oscillator is deeply oversold. Bounce on Monday, but next week may not be a great week. Continuing now the string of not so great weeks for maybe into a third week.